overwhelming to be with all of you here at this place today. I know most of you, but I'm Amy Bowers-Cordalis. My family is from Repoy. I'm Lavina Bowers is grandmother. Bill Bowers is my dad. Sue Maston is my auntie. Jack Matz is my auntie. And I'm related to most of you in some way throughout the past how many thousands of years that we've all been here. I have had the great honor and pleasure of representing Yurok as your lawyer on Klamath River restoration, dam removal, water rights, all of it. I also serve as the tribe's representative to the Klamath River Renewal Corporation's Board of Directors. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, because without your work, without your contributions, all the times that you and your family sacrificed to fight for this river, every time you went without, it made a difference. You all made a difference. And we would not be here without you all and the commitments that your families have made through the generations to this river and to protecting our culture and preserving who we are as Yurok people. You are the reason we are here. And what I think is wonderful is that people know that. People recognize that. When I, have the honor and privilege of going out and talking about dam removal, through working with our partners, everyone recognizes that the Yurok leadership carried the day, carried this project, and that is all of you. I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people here who made so many significant contributions who are gone now, but they're with us in our hearts. They're with us in the air and the birds and the creatures that are around us today witnessing this. And I hope that, the ancestors, the people that we've lost, their peace is a little bit deeper today, knowing that our river is on its path toward healing. A couple things I want to mention about what's going to happen today. So you're witnessing the river flowing free for the first time in history. This is it right today. We will go up and look at the revegetation sites, and you'll see the work of the Yurok tribe in literally replanting and renewing the world seed by seed. And that's the work that our tribe is doing. After this, within a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, the remaining dam here will be totally gone, and the river will be completely free-flowing. The next steps are that Yurok is already engaging in multimillion-dollar habitat restoration programs throughout the whole basin. And the plan is, you open up the river, you rebuild the habitat, and then our third thing is we're working on the water issues. Salmon need water, right? The river needs water to be healthy. And so we're also working on really water rights, getting water in the river. So that's the next thing that the tribe will do. But through all of that, through dam removal, through habitat restoration, through water rights, this river will be healed. And you all set that strategy out, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You guys started that. And, many of us who are your staff today have had the great privilege of implementing that strategy that you all so brilliantly set out, generations before, decades before. And it's all happened. And we remain committed, we remain strong, and we remain dedicated to implementing your vision and following your guidance. And also accepting your prayers. There's so much work that happens in the spiritual realm that leads us to these remarkable moments. And, I want to acknowledge that's here. So, I guess the final thing is, we have to be patient with our river. We expect that salmon runs will start looking better in about 3 to 5 years, but it could take some time. And so, we just have to be with the river and heal that river and watch it heal and know that those fish are coming back and we will be stronger and we will return to the river and fish hard again, right? I also want to say that, this really is a historic moment for the exercise of our sovereignty, consistent with our cultural values, right? We as Yurok people, our charge, our duty from the Creator was to steward this river. And we have honored that obligation since the beginning of time. And we have carried that stewardship forward through some of the hardest times in history: genocide, the invasion, assimilation. And we have succeeded. I hope that everyone can go home today after seeing the river, and it's beginning to heal, and know, that you have done so much and have advanced that original agreement between the Yurok people and the Creator to be stewards. And we have exercised our sovereignty in a way that has worked to rebuild balance and renew the world. So from the most deepest parts of my soul, I have so much gratitude to all of you. And I hope that, today you can be on the river and just feel it. And I hope it restores your soul and that you can take some peace and joy and maybe a little celebration and knowing that all your sacrifice has paid off. So thank you. Thank you.
To read a poem on behalf of Earth. It's from Shauna McCovey, and it's titled Restoration. Yurok Tribe. The dams are coming down. The powers that be, guided by only what could be your hand, have signed a pact to take them down. You are not surprised you saw this day. With magic eyes you made this day. Starry, glittery words, you're making it happen from the other side. Doing angel work, deerskin dancer work, creating miracles, packing rock, making medicine to fix our river, our basin. We know it will be your hand that pushes the button. You will feel the first explosion of concrete, silt, water, the rush of a grateful river. When the second dam comes down, you'll be there, smoking your cigarette, nodding in agreement, trusting in the power of everything unleashed. When the third dam comes down, you'll take a knee at the edge of the world. Say your prayers, and when the song begins, you'll be ready. Yurok Tribe. When the fourth dam comes down, you will raise your flint to the heavens, split the sky wide, opening the ancient spawning grounds. You have made your place in history, and your people's history. This river we love, thanks you. These people you love, thank you.
Hi, Susan Maston, and I had the privilege and honor of serving on the Yurok Transition Team and the Yurok Council, and as the tribal chair and the vice chair. And I just want to kind of remind everyone that the river is who we are as a people. It's the heartbeat of our people. And so at the forefront from the beginning of time, we have worked hard to ensure that the river was protected for today and for future generations. And that made it very challenging when you had to deal with the federal government, who should have been our partner and should have been there for every water flow issue that we faced and should have supported us in those efforts because of their trust, responsibilities, and obligations to the tribe and to the river and its resources. But they failed in almost every case. And so for me, it's extremely rewarding. We made sure as we were forming the tribe that we had the largest fishing department comprised of experts in their field, because we could not afford to lose in the battle for the protection of this river and its resources, because that's who we are as Yurok people. And it's extremely rewarding to be able to see this day and the Creator planned for us to be able to be here when this river would become free-flowing, because everyone who is here has dedicated most of their lives towards this river and this effort. And the tribe has always looked at its tribal members and the grassroots efforts of people to be able to carry that voice forward. And so they supported travel for those members to also be there with us as we advocated on the tribe as a government, but as our people were with us to advocate for the river. And so for that, I'm very proud of. We continue to involve them in that way. And for them and bringing their children, because their children were able to see how important advocating for the protection of the rights of our people and in the Klamath River Basin. And so, we're growing generations of children who realize that there will always be people who look to take away from us, regardless of how little or how much we have. And so we have to be diligent. We have to be more educated. We have to be more advanced in how we strategize about the protection of our resources. And so each generation will face those same battles that we have, because that's just the nature of things. When you have the general population who wants to take everything for today, it's difficult for us to do the work on behalf of our people for tomorrow. And so I'm just so excited to be able to be here with other people who have cared so deeply about this river and have worked so hard to bring us to this point. So thank you, Chairman, for inviting us here on this historic day and allowing for us to participate in this.
I don't talk too long. Let's kind of get straight to it. Look in the back at the work that we've done from a tribal government standpoint. It's a privilege and honor walking on the footsteps of my peers that laid the groundwork before me. It's an honor. It's a privilege. But again, I mentioned this journey is not just elected officials. It's their family. It's their loved ones. That's the journey that they signed up for, because that's what we do regarding the fight for our river, the healing of the basin, to keep alive the wellness of who we are as people. Again, today should be emotional. Today should be spiritual. Today should be cultural. Today should be talking about balance, and they also give thanks for everything that played a role in this. I want to acknowledge Mr. Troy Fletcher, the work that he's done and his team, all our elected officials up here. Hard work, very hard work, but really easy for Yurok tribal members to get behind that hard work, the passion of our river. That's who we are. That's what we do. Again, I just want to say thank you for everybody that played a role in it. I want to give thanks. We have a lot of elected officials that are gone now, Yurok elected officials. They put their sweat into this work too, so we want to acknowledge them and their families. Today's a blessed day. Today's a good day. Today should make your heart feel good for what's behind you, the work that's get done. And our culture people, our traditional people, that's what we do. We dance, we pray, we fast, we sweat, we attend ceremony. This is all what we do behind us. And that's who we are. And again, I just want to thank you on behalf of the Yurok tribe, our members, our community. Thank you.
the Yurok tribal members have been out here, of course, the last few years collecting seed on the ground. We were the Yurok tribal members were the first ones doing implementation for dam removal. Once we got approval, they were the ones doing seed collection out on the ground, actually, across the basin collecting seed that revegetated after drawdown. You're looking at a new free-flowing river right behind us, which is really awesome. What an awesome day to celebrate today. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of understanding of what else that has been happening on the restoration front. You saw some of the wood, that has been stockpiled over by some of the tributaries. That's Camp and Scotch Creek that flow into the main CA Klamath River. That wood was harvested by Yurok tribal members, hauled down to the reservoir, and will be installed next summer, using heavy equipment in partnership with the Yurok Tribe Construction Corporation and the Fisheries Department and the rest of the team, as well as Revegetation and planting, etc. So there's 5 primary restoration sites within the reservoir reach. Jenny Creek, Camp and Scotch Creek, Beaver Creek up in Copco, and then Spencer Creek all the way up in J.C. Boyle Reservoir. So we have a lot of work to do in partnership with Resource Environmental Solutions. We might met some of them. They're part of the KRRC team. We're partnered with them and doing restoration actions. So everything from large wood harvesting and hauling, revegetation, and then we're doing all of the data collection, aerial data collection for dam removal too. So we've already done approximately 6 different flights with Condor Aviation and the Yurok Tribe's new plane. So we've been collecting LiDAR and imagery. We were the first ones to essentially survey a new river, and as it unfolded. So we were out on day 1 flying and collecting data in partnership with those folks I mentioned before. So that's been going on. We've been doing tree removal in Works Canyon to help support that. Our crews did do sediment evacuation during drawdown in some of the tributary areas in partnership with RES, and many other things in the planning phases. But again, a lot of the Fisheries Department, both the revegetation side, design and data collection side, but also on the water policy side. And so I just wanted to give Mike a quick shout out for all of the work he's done for decades. And Mike, it wouldn't have happened without all the hard work that you put in. So I just wanted to personally say thank you for everything that you're doing for the tribe. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to say a few words before I turn it over to Josh and Bree.
So you're looking at this river behind us that's newly connected, and it's really significant for a lot of reasons for salmon. The goal behind dam removal is for salmon security into the future, based on times for climate change, cold water. These fish are now going to be able to get the cold water. Just upriver from here, from Copco, are some very large springs that come into the river. We predicted that there would be temperature benefits to dam removal. You can look at the data right now, and it's really different. J.C. Boyle and Iron Gate Reach are now the coldest reach of the entire river. It's colder than it is upriver in Keno. It's colder than it is downriver. This river is going to cool from this spot down, and we have fish on their way up already. And this is what we're seeing. So we can't get all that cold water through these reservoirs. It just gets swallowed up and warmed up. Now, with this connection here, fish can get to all of that cold water. The big springs at J.C. Boyle, Copco springs that come down in the mouth here, and also these cold creeks, Shovel Creek, Jenny Creek, and Spencer Creek. So it's really exciting. This provides geographic diversity for salmon. It provides genetic diversity. And overall, in the long run, we're going to revive a lost run of fish. We're going to bring back springers to here. And that area in the canyon is going to be a big time spring salmon holding area. And then there's a lot of springer habitat. If you go further up past the lake into the Williamson and the Sprague River, that's the goal here, to revive a lost run of fish right now. And it can't happen fast enough. So in partnership, we're working really closely right now with the Klamath tribes. That's good. We've had our differences over the years. We're doing restoration projects for them in the upper basin, but more importantly, they're working and getting invested in the reintroduction plan on the. And so we talk about bringing
down the barriers here, it's people. It's uniting people as well as uniting. That's what's really important. And it's just been my biggest honor of my life to work with Yurok Tribe. I appreciate everyone.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
So there already are a whole bunch of monitoring stations. Rez is running some of them, Yurok Tribe is running some of them, and Yurok is running a lot of them downriver. And so they're monitoring everything from temperature to dissolved oxygen to turbidity, pH, all the things. And you can actually go and look in real time. So the Yurok Tribe has a website that houses all the data, and you can just go look and you'd be like, oh, that water temperature is measured 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So it's all live and it's available in real time now. And I throw a graph up on and see all the water temperatures up and down the river in real time. So that's when I say, this is the coldest water in the river. I know it. I just looked at it. So.
How important is that being connected now as far as being applied to other rivers and fishery systems?
I think, this dam, there's been some others, right? There's been Condit, but this is the biggest one, and other people all over the world have been watching us and seeing exactly what happens. So science is involved in collecting like topographic sediment data, and then there's been a lot of water quality data, and you believe everybody's looking. There's efforts on the Snake River right now. Yeah. The tribes up there, Salmon people, visited us to get inspiration, to figure out how can we get these dams out? What can we do better? So they came here to look at that. And the Maori from New Zealand came because they have some dams they want to get out. And they're like, how'd you do that? How'd you pull this off? So part of getting the dams out was we had to beat them at the science. Mm-hmm. That was like a necessary first step to just even enable negotiations to happen. And then, so they're in the same boat right now. So they're watching closely.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide a little context for what we're seeing now for council members. So what all this was is the former reservoir sites behind the dams. And what you're seeing here, this is where the toxic blue-green algae would come from. So remember those images of the really, really green, ugly, stagnant, like toxic water? It was all through here. And so now look how quickly it's become a river again. We drew down the reservoirs in January, and look, we have a river, right? And so this gray area you see, that was all inundated with water, so the water levels were up there. And it's been really beautiful to watch the Yurok crews come in and hand seed the area and begin to revegetate this, and I'll let you all talk about that. But I did want to make one point about the data, and your staff is in a conversation about how we as the Yurok can make sure that we are leading the effort to monitor the healing of the river so that data is interpreted in a way that is consistent with our worldview, right? There's that modern science that is so siloed and, looks at things sort of separated from the other parts of the ecosystem. And so what we need to do is come in and monitor it holistically and let the river tell us how it's going to heal, through observation. And that's why the work these guys are doing, being on the ground and observing the river's healing and then interpreting it consistent with our worldview is going to be so important, because we need to remain at the forefront of telling the story of the river's healing and making sure that we prove that this works. So just want to make that point. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, as stewards. Sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question, because all the banks from the reservoir, how much sediment over the course next winter will make it to the river, and then how, and I know they're planning, but I'm just wondering how long it would take for vegetation to regrow in these areas, and how long we expect that there's going to be runoff that's sediment.
Well, I'll take a shot. I know it's a revenge question, but so the river's going to be touchy for a while, right? It's brand new. It's raw. This, like you can see some color here. This is residual from JC Boyle and Copco, still coming down right now. I don't think the main Copco breach has reached us yet. You'll see a gradual clearing trend. A lot of this stuff is fine. It's deposited at various locations. Most of it went up to seed, but there are deposits. You can see some by Brooks Riffle, I saw. There's some at various places down the river. That's going to last either a year or two or the first big event. It's movable. It's going to go out as soon as we get a big event. These reservoirs, I think you're just going to see a steady decline in turbidity here over time, but they're going to be a little touchy at first. Like when we get rainstorm stuff, there's still some easily mobilized sediment. That will all decrease over time as the vegetation takes place. And that's what Josh is. I'll let him talk to you about how long that will be.
Before Josh starts, I just want to introduce Josh real quick. You guys may not know him. So 5 years ago, Mike and Dave Hillemeyer and myself went up to the Algae dam removal and did like a technology exchange. When we heard Josh up there, he was working for the team up there doing revegetation on the Algae dam removal, and he gave a presentation about the revegetation and all the trajectory of what they're seeing there and some of the monitoring. And we were just super impressed. We were like, we got to bring this guy down to Team Yurok.
We like made up our mind.
we already knew we were going to hire him before he even knew. So we brought him down about 4 years ago now.
5 years.
5 years, wow. Yeah. So Josh has been on the Fisheries team for 5 years, and he's a senior riparian ecologist, and he leads the entire revegetation crew, made up of completely tribal members, and we're really, really, really proud of all the work. Josh, for listening on some of the work you guys want.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, DJ. It took him 2 years to get one little just follow up on the sediment issue. It's really driven by the river, not so much the veg. Most of the stuff on the slopes is probably not going anywhere, right? So all any muddiness you see is river flow driven. And what we saw in the Algae was it's really about that peak event, right? So there's still a lot of material in here that can be moved because it hasn't been exposed to a free-flowing winter event. And so the worst is over, right? Because most of it was in the path of the river. But it's still going to come up in a nice big event, and maybe that takes a few years before we get a real event. Same thing on the Algae. There could still be more movement 10 years later, but it's got to be higher than the 20,000 CFS event that we had about year 3 after dam removal. So again, it's all just that flow-driven aspect, not veg-driven, and it's all, again, it's going to be less and less over time.
Looking at all this land.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Yeah. No, that's staying put. So I will talk a little bit about the veg. Yeah. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, I came down in 2019. He threw me into a team that was already collecting seed. I had no idea what I was doing. I collected seed before, but new ecosystem, new world. And really, we got a handle on it in 2022. And so really what the goal was is it was a really specific job we had that KRC defined, which was you need to collect seed and propagate seed for the revegetation program that's from the watershed. Most restoration projects don't do that, right? They just buy seed commercially. And if you're lucky, it's native. And if it is native, it's from wherever the heck they grew that seed from, right? It's not necessarily from the place you're trying to plant. Federal governments do that. Luckily, KRC kind of adapted that, said this is what we want to do on this project. And so that's why it took us 5 years to seed collect to deal with the scope, right? 2,000 acres. And so the way you have to think about a restoration program like this is there's 2 ways to reintroduce plants back into the project. One is just directly sow the material onto the landscape, and then the other one is to actually grow a plant and then plant it onto the landscape. This project and most projects, they want to do a nice seeding of the entire landscape first, and that makes sense. So as you can imagine, 2,000 acres, that's a lot of seed. And you can't, even in 5 years, even with, 10 speggies, you can't collect enough seed. Maybe if I had 20 speggies. It's just not possible, right? So what you do is you have to collect basically your source material. You give it to these nurseries that specialize in growing that in their fields with farm equipment, right? In big, huge farms. And then they harvest off that plant material that they use from the wild. And so that's essentially G1 material, generation 1 seed material. So it's still your genetics, right? It's only one generation away. And then they can get thousands and thousands of pounds that way. And we've done that for this project for 29 species. And as of last year, it was about 65,000 pounds, almost 66,000 pounds of seed. And there's still stuff growing this year. In fact, this is the last year of our contracts. So when we're done, we're expecting around 75,000 pounds of custom grown Klamath seed. And so it's taken that long, right? It takes 5 years, because you can't, there's not 100 acres out there doing this kind of work. So it took time. Some things don't work. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for the seeds to grow. Because it's a perennial. It takes a while. But we had plenty of seed by the time dam removal started, which we were really lucky. Thank God we had all those delays in dam removal because the Reveg program was not ready until this year. This is the first time we were ready. And the design that I came up with for this project was high diversity. So someone asked me earlier, what's the goal of seeding? The goal of seeding is the obvious one, and that is erosion control, right? So you do want to stop any kind of erosion from your slopes down into the river. That biggest risk is year one after a dam removal project when things are still loose. And if it's rainy, then you'll start to get sloughing into the reservoir. Over time, the surficial erosion, especially if it's a super clayey sediment, which this is, lots of clay particles in there, so it's really tight, holds together really well, but you could get just natural erosion from wind events or rain events. So you want vegetation to grow there to kind of just interrupt that process. So that's the first goal. The second goal is to keep the invasive species out, right? So get the things you want growing first. So all the invasives in the surrounding landscape, and there are many, don't dominate your new area. This is a really bad place for invasives. We are surrounded by invasives. This is star thistle right here. You can see it's like basically the only thing you can see behind you. Medusa head is a grass. It dominates these grasslands. And when we did some work during the seed collection process, and we found that if non-natives were abundant, the overall number of species present, species richness, diversity is really low. It's basically just invasives. We did find a few places where the natives were much more abundant, and in those places we had like double or triple the number of species present compared to the place where they're invasives. So there's a lot of reasons you don't want invasives in there. You want diversity, right? You want your ecosystem to be able to respond to a disturbance, to be able to rebound. And if you have a lot of different species there, then maybe one species doesn't handle that disturbance while the other one does, right? God fill the niche. Plus we have all these other animals out here, right? Whether you're talking about pollinators, soil microbes, birds, mammals, all of those things are dependent on vegetation. So if you only have like 5 or 6 species, you're not going to have as many birds, mammals, and pollinators, right? And soil microbes. And so that diversity, we barely know the importance of it, but we certainly know it's important. So what I've done in this project was made sure that our seed mixes are highly diverse right from the get-go. Typically a restoration project, you go to a store, you go to one of these big growers and you say, I want a native seed mix. And they go, okay, here's native seed mix number 9. And there's probably 6 or 7 species in there. And it's the same species no matter who you buy from. And the reason that is because a lot of these species are easy to grow. They're cheap. They can produce them and they can sell them, right? And then they do well in your seed mix. I push that envelope. My seed mixes that we sowed last year had anywhere from, I think the lowest one is 11 species and the highest one is 22. And I did that on purpose, and I wanted to introduce that in year one because any dam removal project, what I learned from the Elwang is that you draw a reservoir down, it's wet as heck, You put seed on top of that really wet sediment, and it's like free irrigation, right? It just germinates, it sucks up all that moisture, and everything does well. And so, but there could be things that do well and others that don't. Throw your diversity out there right away. If you get high diversity in year one, you're guaranteed to have a lot of diversity throughout time. On the Elwha, we actually had a low diversity mix. It was like 6 to 8 species, and we found that seeding actually suppressed species diversity. So you can have the adverse effect on your landscape if you don't introduce enough diversity. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. On top of all that, we collected seed to grow all the trees and shrubs. So all the trees and shrubs are grown from seed that these guys collected in the field. Seed collecting is grueling. It's not super fun like it sounds. It's not as bad as weed whacking, right?
Shaking the bush, right?
But these guys, and I've had some staff. I have one staff with me from 2019 still. His name's Ben Hunsucker. Some of you might know him. He's my veteran. And then Alana Grant has been with me for 4 years. She's Peru. But these guys, they go out there and they're doing the hard work, right? They're out there in 105-degree weather, whatever it is. It's really hot and dry here because they got, the seed's only good for like 5 days, and they got to collect it for those 5 days or they miss it, right? And so that work, I can't emphasize enough how important it is. And you could never do anything like this with my ambition of species diversity unless you have the people to get out there and do it. And I can tell you, there's no better seed collectors than the Yurok tribal members. And I've had a lot of seed collectors in my day. Most people, they peter out. They don't like it. They can't handle it. I think, Spiggy, in your first few months, you were like, there's a purpose out here, and I am embracing it. And so I think that was huge, right? In addition to that, they're out here in the summer weed whacking. I mentioned weed whacking. So part of our job is seed collection. That's one, right? So 66,000 pounds by the time dam removal started, and then plenty of seed for all our trees and shrubs. But we also had to manage the invasives. And obviously we can't on this landscape scale. So what we were doing was we were trying to create a buffer where there was basically from 50 to 100 feet from the shoreline, we were trying to knock back the invasives. So there weren't as many, and they couldn't go to seed and just disperse right into the reservoir before our stuff got established. And so I have these guys weed whacking in 100-degree weather, sometimes smoke filtering in, it's smoky all the time. Another hard job. And these guys not only endured, but they became really good at it. And then we make them go back and actually pull the weeds that they missed. So grubbing was huge. They become expert grubbers. That's what they're doing today, actually. We're going to these pullouts where there's an invasive species that loves the pullouts, and it has a really, you might have seen it called puncture vine, and it'll get in the tire and move around. And so they're out making sure. We've been inspecting these sites for the whole summer, and so when we find it, we just pull it out of the ground and get rid of it. So obviously this year dam removal started in January. There was a lot of uncertainty into how that would play out. The res team was worried that it wouldn't be safe to hand sow, which was designed for the 66,000 pounds of seed. It was designed to hand sow the reservoirs twice. So we barely had enough. And so res was worried that if you can't hand sow it by hand, and they really want to make sure everything got some seed in year one. They wanted to use a helicopter. Now, helicopter, as you guys have probably known, is or you may or may not know, when you try to drop seed from a helicopter, you get even worse germination because now your seed is coming from all the way up here, and it's got like 100 feet down, before it hits the ground. So you get really bad seed to soil contact, and so that reduces the ability for the seed to germinate. Hand sowing is not great either, but it's a drop like this as opposed to up there. So one, hand sowing can make sure you have better contact and better distribution, but it's still not as good as using like a farm equipment, right? So we didn't have enough seed for helicopters, so last minute res made sure they bought another 40,000 native mix number 9 so that they could use the helicopter, because the helicopter was 50 pounds an acre, whereas our team was doing anywhere from 11 to 30 pounds an acre depending on the seed mix. And so dam removal started. We had a target to hand sow about 900 of the 2,000 acres. And the reason for that was, you have a window when you want to put your seed down. It's not going to germinate in June and survive. So, our goal was to have it all on the ground by March 15th in the lower elevation and by April 1st at the upper elevation. And there was concern that the reservoirs might refill. Because dam removal, as we just saw, that it was not free-flowing river. They didn't just open it, right? They sent it through that tunnel that we saw today. And so that tunnel had a limit to how much could go out, pass through. So if there was a big flood event, they would back up behind that tunnel and refill the reservoir. And so that's why we had a 900-acre mandate. We didn't want to put seed down and then have it refill and then wash away. We started as soon as we could, right? We hoped to be out there within 3 to 4 days of the first drawdown. And we get out there, and unfortunately, it was really a slog. It was super muddy and hard. And so now these guys have to deal with the sweat and heat in summer now, making them go out there and sink in the mud in 40-degree weather. Not much pelting rain, but so that was challenging. So we had to adapt. It was very difficult, and we had to adapt. And I had to every day change where I was sending them. And what we did was we followed where it was safe to seed. And so they hand sowed basically a skinny rim, and then they'd come back and a week later, and I'd send them to Copco to do the skinny rim. And they come back here and do the skinny rim. And they get down as far as they could. And it ended up being around 450 acres that we were able to hand sow. And again, those seed mixes, I don't think I did the 11 species one. That was a riparian mix, but the upland mixes were in the 18 to 22 species range. And then in March, the helicopter came through, kind of waited to see how we did, plus they had to get them mobilized and all that. And then the helicopter finished off the rest of the landscape with their helicopter seed. So the question is, how did it do? That's the big story that I can talk about now. Year one was awesome. Okay, it might not look like it from this perspective, but year one was fantastic. The hand sowing was wildly successful. I think a lot of the folks out here have been out there. I know Matt's been out there. Mike's been out there. It was basically like a super bloom on those skinny areas at the top of the reservoir where we hand sowed. And when you walked out into that landscape, it was teeming with life. Bees, all kinds of pollinators. I counted on the Insignia, so one of the native species is fiddleneck. And I counted up to 8 different butterfly species over the period of a few weeks on those fiddlenecks. It was a lot, right? And that's because there was such diversity of species. There was something for everyone out there if you're a pollinator, right? A bunch of boards, so lots of things that we were showing, lots of grasses. And that really just created a beautiful matrix in the most important part of the reservoir, right? That upper rim is now our buffer from this weedy landscape. So if there's a bunch of natives up here, it's a lot harder for those weeds to migrate down and work their way into the rest of the reservoir. And you're at the top, so all the seeds kind of start to move down. It's going to have an influence below that ridge. And so that's the goal, and that kind of worked out really well. The helicopter seed also did well because a lot of the places where my crew was sinking and we couldn't seed, well, guess what? That meant there was a lot of moisture, especially in Copco. So the Copco reservoir, if you get a chance to go out there, you should. There's a bunch of flats, and March 7th, there's standing water, thin, shimmering layer of standing water, and they dropped seed on that, and it went bonkers. In those places, 100% cover of grasses from the helicopter seed. In this landscape, it didn't do quite as well, so you can see opposite, that side of the landscape that's really gray. We did not do any hand seeding because we couldn't access it. There's no roads to that side. So there was no safe way to get there. So that's all helicopter seed, and it didn't do quite as well because it was a little drier, we're a little lower in elevation, and so it didn't take off quite as well in Iron Gate as the hand seed. The hand seeding is a little hard for me to kind of show you because it's actually on these slopes that we can't really see. But when you drive back, you will see towards the top of the reservoir a lot of brown vegetation. like much more so than below that hand seeding line. Take a look at that. That is our work, and that is, I consider successful. DJ was asking, what's going to happen to that vegetation? It's all dried out, right? Well, a couple things. As you can see, that's just what happens here, right? Things dry out in the summer. It's a lot of the species that we sowed are annuals, and so I guarantee you they went to seed because I was walking through them doing plots, and the seed was popping everywhere and getting in my shoes. It was very annoying. So lots of seed out there just from the next generation, from what we put out there. There's a lot of perennials that are still green out there. A couple really key species. There's like Oregon Sunshine, and it's looking great. It's a perennial. It's going to look a long time, and it's green out there right now. We've got gumweed that's going crazy and looking really good, blooming right now out there on the landscape. We've got blazing, smooth stem blazing star. So there's a intentional design to our seeding where you have your early species that bloom, they go green, and then they fade. And then there's the later species that seem to not care about this heat. They love it. And so there's 3 or 4 of those species out there right now blooming and bringing in pollinators. And so that gives us the greatest impact on, trying to restore these slopes and these grasslands to a thriving ecosystem. And 2 of my best. Okay, I'm not kidding. 2 of my best.
My nephew is also
Proud auntie over here.
runs in the family.
I want to add something too. This job is an opportunity, and one of the things that DJ said when he brought me down was like, okay, yeah, half your job is restoration, but the other half is being able to kind of teach and mentor tribal members and give them skill sets for this in the future. And so I always saw that as like, I'm handing off, right? I want me to be a tribal member in the future. And so there could be one of them right there. And one last thing, Revegetation is not over.
Yeah.
This was just 1 year. I mean, the real work actually starts this fall and this winter. And then we'll have another fall and winter, and then 5 years of maintenance and monitoring. And one of those pieces is monitoring. And I know I've been talking to Amy a little bit about it, but that's a great way to really hone those botanical skills. And to me, when I'm out there and I monitor, which I did this summer a little bit, I mean, I learned way more and I adjust, right? I'm going, oh, wow, this didn't work. And, because I'm sitting there staring at it and surveying it, it's the culmination of all your work, right? So these guys are out there and they know the landscape better than me, right? They walked this whole landscape how many times this summer? At least twice. At least. Because they had to do EDRR, so they had to go out there and look for weeds across the whole landscape. And then they had to do soil surveys across the entire landscape. All 3 reservoirs. So, to see the culmination of all that work at the end in the monitoring piece, which we hope to start next year, is like a great way for this to kind of come full circle. And hopefully the Yurok Tribe is leading that effort, both in the weed management, maintenance and monitoring, and all of the things to come until 2030. And I need more people.
Make sure of that. You guys want to make sure that we continue to be the lead on Klamath River Basin.
Yep. And if you know other people that need work, I need more people.
Yeah, spread the word. We're hiring.
Yeah, I got job announcements going out this week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.